Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where surprisingly, for an end of summer box office report like the Labor Day weekend, we have an awful lot to talk about. There were a couple of last hurrahs. So, of course, the biggest headline is coming from Crazy Rich Asians, which truly was the Cinderella story of the summer box office. Yes, while all the weekend holds over Labor Day were pretty darn impressive, 5 pictures posted drops of less than 20%. I guess everybody got out to the movies one last time before we kind of clear the deck with some big contenders actually this coming weekend. But anyway, Crazy Rich Asians still posted the best hold of the bunch at a mere 11% drop. Wowza! And by the end of the holiday weekend, it has amassed $117 million, which might seem, okay, that's nice, It's important for movies to get past the century mark, but many do. But it becomes much more impressive when you realize that it has topped the most recent successful romantic comedy Trainwreck and the most recent successful live-action comedy period, Girls Trip. Not a lot of money in those areas because, those are all not great considering what other movies are making. Now, the latter, Girls Trip, launched Tiffany Haddish's career, and I think she's right in the cusp of really breaking through. I think a lot of it before was hype, being created by her team, and I think the media, but I think she's right on the edge of legitimately being hugely successful. It's very exciting, actually. I think she has some very good pictures coming up. But we have yet to see any real deals come out of Crazy Rich Asians. Again, I feel Awkwafina needs to be Jubilee. She is Jubilee as far as I'm concerned. But so far, not really anything. But I would like you to remember that there was also a delay in deals for the cast of Black Panther, but they ultimately came out very strong across the board. Even M'Baku got some great stuff, and he deserves it. Winston Duke was fantastic in Black Panther. Now, I'm sure some of you might have already mentioned, one deal that is percolating is that Michelle Yeoh and Awkwafina, interestingly, those are the two that were picked, not Constance Wu, we'll talk about her in a moment, but there's talk of them reteaming for an interdimensional action film. That sounds pretty good until you realize it's from the team behind the total failure and embarrassment that was Swiss Army Man. Remember that? Remember Daniel Radcliffe as a farting corpse, right, who became a life raft? So that would seem like a booby prize, even if it is produced by the Russo brothers. Are the Russo brothers crazy like a fox, or do they need Kevin Feige's guiding hand? We'll see relatively soon as they strike out on their own with a deal at Fox, which of course is now owned by Disney. Hilarious! All right, so who would you like to see, by the way, benefit from Crazy Rich Asians? If you were a producer, who would you cherry pick out of the cast? You know that Awkwafina would be my first draft pick, but I suspect that if A Simple Favor does well, Henry Golding will be fielding even more offers. I think he's probably pretty high on studios' wish lists. And I can see Gemma Chan and Michelle Yeoh, by the way, picking up some strong supporting roles as well. But the big question mark is Constance Wu. She really spearheaded this whole thing, being very vocal and aggressive about representation with the Great Wall, as you might recall. And it will be interesting to see what she gets out of this. I'm surprised she hasn't gotten something already, although I can see her holding out for a lead role. She's not going to maybe want supporting after this because she'll see, I think rightfully so, that it's a step back. Now the question is, will she get offered any lead roles, and how long will it take? What will the quality of the lead roles be? Now she can head this off by producing a leading role herself, and she could even reteam with John Chu, who's remade his own image as the poster guy for Asian representation in Hollywood. Now, I'm sure he wasn't anyone's first choice, but he deserves a lot of respect for not only thinking of it, but actually making it a reality. No one else thought of it, no one else did it, so whatever you might think of John's ability as a director and a producer, he still, he did it. He has ownership of this, and that is impressive. Now, some fans are hoping that Crazy Rich Asians can party all the way to near 200 million domestic. But it will be interesting. I think they're basing that on the amazing holds so far. But remember that so far Crazy Rich Asians hasn't really gone up against any actual competition. But it will this coming weekend. And in fact, one of those movies is Friendly Fire from Warner Brothers. They sat out the summer, but they're cooking now. Now, the trades have been comparing Crazy Rich Asians to The Help in terms of box office comparisons, pointing out that, both based on popular books with strong female appeal. And some have also made a comparison to the 50 Shades franchise as well, because that's very lavish and I think was more of a phenomenon than The Help. Like a movie that even if you felt you probably weren't going to like it, you felt you needed to go and see. Whereas I think The Help was, more highly regarded critically. And I know that Crazy Rich Asians has good reviews, but if you actually look at the reviews closely, a lot of them are like, we should support this movie. Not that it's actually a good movie. But the comparison that I would make with Crazy Rich Asians is actually My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That is, I think, an excellent comparison. Now, if you don't recall that film, it was a runaway hit in the summer of 2002, serving as counter-programming to the big blockbusters. And by the way, with 50 Shades and My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that's also a warning sign that it can be tough to make lightning strike twice. And John Chu shouldn't get too comfortable and not worry about having to make the sequel. And by the way, I don't believe it's actually still been officially greenlit. It's just still something Warner Brothers is pursuing. Now, My Big Fat Greek Wedding opened in April in limited release, then played all summer long as it slowly expanded across the country and then the world. And it did get to over 200 million domestic. But in contrast, Crazy Rich Asians opened wide at the end of the summer, and movies burned faster and brighter these days at the box office. Again, I think it's going to get cut off at the knees with this weekend's new releases. But I do think that Crazy Rich Asians, just like A Quiet Place's sequel, is now suddenly a summer movie with a May release date, 2020. I bet you that if they do go ahead with the Crazy Rich Asians sequel, which I think they will, I bet you it has a much more competitive release date as well. However, I think that it's very important to see that in both cases, you had a specific culture with a wedding backdrop that really struck a chord with audiences. So if any other cultural group is looking for a hit movie, they should consider this formula. Now, I suspect that Crazy Rich Asians will end at about 150 domestic and then make an obscene amount of money in the ancillary market. It's just getting started overseas, but it still doesn't have a Chinese release date and might not ever get one, as we've discussed. I told you first that I thought that the representation of wealth would be a problem with China, especially since the government is cracking down on that. And sure enough, I started to see that argument in the trades this week as well. Now, speaking of China, they don't have any problem if you want to do your own stunts, apparently, over there. The government will allow it. And Mission Impossible Fallout hit the Middle Kingdom with a franchise best opening of $77 million. That's more than Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, Mission Impossible Fallout, with that debut, it pretty much assures that the Tom Cruise flick will pass $700 million worldwide, which would also be a franchise best. And while many of us would like to see Christopher McQuarrie make a comic book movie, I think Paramount will likely cut him the necessary size check to keep him with this franchise for at least one more entry. And it's got to sting that Tom Cruise made sure that Henry Cavill was cut out from any future installments, right? And now, as Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie and probably Rebecca Ferguson and Simon Pegg and basically everybody else march on, right? And now Cavill finds himself solely on the small screen with no big picture deals on the horizon. We've been arguing about this today, and I think that if Henry Cavill wants to make this not look so bad, he should get a big picture deal to balance out his new Netflix series. So it seems like he still is big screen talent. And just like Chris Hemsworth is doing with his Netflix movie, but of course, the new Men in Black. And of course, Avengers 4. Now, interestingly, China seems to only be able to focus on one big movie a weekend, at least from Hollywood, as Ant-Man and the Wasp, which again opened at 68 last weekend, fell 83% in its second weekend. Thanks to Japan, its final market, which it just entered, the MCU flick is going to pass 600 million globally. But it didn't have a happy ending like Spider-Man Homecoming, as many of you were sure that it was going to, because it's still the lowest grossing MCU sequel to date worldwide, and its entire global take matches Incredible 2's domestic take, which thanks to one last hurrah over the holiday weekend, it fell off in terms of theater count, but they put it back into wide release for one more weekend, and now domestically it is the highest grossing animated movie of all time. Let's hope all that green lights The Incredibles 3. And we don't have to wait quite so long this time. Now, although Brad Bird, of course, his live-action dream is dead, so he doesn't have anything to go off and prove now, and he can just focus on making another one of these. Now, as for the holiday weekend's new releases, two small movies, both with A- cinema scores, by the way, found their similar-sized small audiences. Searching expanded wide, and like Crazy Rich Asians, proved that Caucasian audiences are open to movies with largely Asian casts, and that Asian moviegoers who usually sit out most movies will show up. Oh, by the way, interestingly, African American turnout for both Crazy Rich Asians and Searching has been very low. Then Operation Finale skewed much older, largely due to the subject matter, the 1960s capture of SS officer Adolf Eichmann by Israeli intelligence, which many older viewers likely remember from the resulting televised trial. Both flicks, by the way, I think will do healthy business on streaming and suffer from the fact that many people these days, they ask themselves, is this worth paying to see in the theater? And unfortunately, I think the answer with both these movies was no. I'm curious, do you plan to see these movies at some point, or are you just skipping them entirely? Or did you see them like myself and agree that they're both pretty darn good? Searching is much better than Operation Finale, but Operation Finale is a nice little movie. As for the overall top 10, this is very interesting. Happy Time Murders has a chalk outline around itself now at the box office, dead in only its second weekend. But thankfully, it looks like Melissa McCarthy might have come back to life already. This is why you've always got to have multiple projects lined up. So if you miss with one, you have another shot coming right away. You don't have to. It lessens the repercussions. Because sure enough, Melissa McCarthy debuted her new small film, Can You Ever Forgive Me, at Telluride over the weekend, and it became a sudden Oscar contender with glowing reviews, particularly for McCarthy, with many industry pundits feeling that she might even be a lock for a Best Actress nomination. This movie also apparently stars the Robert De Niro of Cats. I kid you not. Everyone is saying this cat is like the new sensation of the awards season, and we might have another Uggy on our hands. So you heard about the cat here first. Now, as for this coming weekend, the Conjuring universe is expected to churn out yet another hit, opening right in line with all the other entries to date. Then, it's a good thing that Jennifer Garner is moving to HBO, because it seems her bid to pull a Liam Neeson is going to be DOA. Like Henry Cavill, she's going to have to go to the small screen. Small screen can sustain a career, it can salvage a career, it can change, it can pivot a career. But rarely, when someone's doing super well, do they go to a small screen. It's just the truth of the matter. Now, also, faith-based film God Bless the Broken Road also hits theaters, and we'll see if it ends up being one of the faith-based genre's rare surprise hits. When people are like, wow, how did that suddenly make so much money? And why didn't the other ones not, right? If you're into faith-based films, I'd be curious, is God Bless the Broken Road on your radar? And that's this week's Movie Math. Thank you so much for going over the box office with me. I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it down below, including what you plan to see this coming weekend and what you've checked out so far and what you haven't. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.